Hey, it's Rob. Welcome back to Axel's Garage. We're out here with Cosmo, the 2000 Jeep Cherokee, and this is our second video with the AC. So if you didn't see the first one, it's real easy. We bought the vehicle about 6-8 months ago now, and the guy that we owned it from, that we bought it from, was not the original owner, but it was in his family the whole time that it was owned. And he said the air conditioning just quit working. They never did anything to try to diagnose it or fix it or anything. It just stopped blowing cold air, and they drove it for tens of thousands of miles after it stopped blowing cold air, just not using the air conditioning. So the system is intact, and the first thing we did was we just went and put a set of gauges on it to see if there was any pressure in the system, and there was about 10 pounds in the system. So we knew that it was low, but it wasn't an open system where we had a hole that everything had drained out. So we tried to jump by taking the low pressure switch here, turn the AC on in the car with the engine running, and try to jump the switch. And when you jump the switch, how the switch works is it senses pressure on the low side, and when it reaches a predetermined amount, whatever that might be, where there's enough pressure for the AC system to run, it closes the circuit, so both sides of this sensor come together, and it pretty much jumps this terminal, and it reads that there's enough pressure in the system to run. It turns the system on, sends power to the clutch, does everything else so that the AC can run. So we jumped this and could not get that clutch to run. So we tried adding a little bit of R134A, and we only added about less than half a can, which is about 6 or 8 ounces, and those 6 or 8 ounces that we put in brought our pressures up to 60 or 70 on the low side, which, well, actually the compressor wasn't running, so it was 60 or 70 in the whole system, and we still could not get the compressor to kick on. We tried jumping this terminal, could not get the compressor to kick on, and it got dark on us, and we said, okay, we have a problem somewhere that we're going to have to look at, and we quit for the night, and that was the end of that video. So the little big dummy who's been using this car every day, he comes home one day, and the car was sitting here cold, and that's the key, is it was cold. The engine was cold, completely, not cold, but it was not warmed up at all. So I started doing some troubleshooting, and I should have had the camera out, but sometimes when you're tinkering troubleshooting, it's a really boring video. But just to give you a rundown on what I did was, I just took a regular test light, an incandescent test light, put it on my battery negative. I checked my battery, made sure that I had voltage there. Okay, so I know my battery was good. I checked the battery cable going down to the starter. I made sure that was good. I checked it to the junction here underneath the power distribution box that's in the engine compartment. I had power there, so I was happy that I had power everywhere I needed power. Then I put my clamp on the positive battery terminal, brought it over to the negative. I had power, went to my body ground, and I was able to light it up. All right, now all that's showing you is that you have a ground. Doesn't mean it's a great ground, because this is only a little tiny bulb in here. It's not carrying a lot of current. But I went on the engine, one of the head studs, and you know, sometimes you gotta give it a little grind with your test light to get a good clean piece of metal, and I had ground there. So I knew my body to battery was good. I knew my engine to body was good, and so I'm trying to eliminate things. So then I came over here, and I'll show you. Let me move the camera. So then I came over here to my compressor, and I could see a ground lug with a wire going to it, and I put my test light on there. All right, and you can see I'm lighting up, so I got ground going to the compressor. Then I went over to my temperature sender, which is supposed to turn the fan on when the AC's on. So I wanted to make sure that had a good ground. And after scraping, if you just touch it, right, just touch it, it doesn't work. I did a lot of scraping already, but if you just touch it, it's not going to work. But if you scrape it a little, then you can see you got clean metal there, and the light lights up, so you're good there. So now I knew that I had a decent ground circuit. All right, so now Now what do we have? I'm going to put my test light back on battery negative, and I'm going to take my cover off my power distribution box without hopefully breaking it. Alright, and it's labeled on the inside, so what did I do? I got my clamp on battery negative. Alright, so I'm looking for positive power. I check it at my terminal. I'm good there, and then I can go through all of these fuses on both sides and making sure I have good power to all these fuses. The ones being the most important are going to be my cooling fan and my AC clutch. So AC clutch is going to be here. I had power. Cooling fan is going to be this 40 amp one right here, and I got power on both sides. I'm good there. So now I have two relays to deal with. I have my cooling fan relay and I got my AC relay. We're really looking for the AC right now, but this cooling fan keeps hitting me in the back of the head because we know the cooling fan wasn't turning on either. And that's the auxiliary one, that's the electric one. We have a regular clutch fan in these, and then when you use the AC or coolant temperature goes around 200 or so. Some books say it's set at 190, some books say it's set at like 215. To come on at 215 and off at 218. I don't know which is accurate, but I know it's just not coming on, even when the engine's hot. I've never heard it come on. So this one right here is my AC clutch relay. Now, a real, poor man's way of troubleshooting one of these relays is you have a whole slew of them. So you have a fuel pump, which you need, starter you need, and then you got your front O2 and your rear O2. So these are O2 sensor relays. So you can theoretically pull one of these relays. If you don't have a check engine light for an O2, these relays are good. So you can take one of these relays out and put it in here and see if that makes a difference in your diagnosis. You'll throw a check engine light, yeah, because you don't have an O2 circuit completed, but it's an easy troubleshooting way as opposed to throwing parts at it and just buying a relay when you don't know if a relay is good or not. What I did was I checked power. So I took my test light hooked to battery negative, right? Make sure it's good. And then right here on the relay, right on the relay, it shows you the wiring diagram for this relay, and it's going to show you that terminal 4 is normally closed to terminal 30. Terminal 5, which is 87, is normally open to 30, and then it shows you your switch side, which is going to be 85 and 86, and it's got numbers on it because on the bottom of this it uses numbers 1 to 5, not 87A, 87, 85, 86, and 30 like a bigger relay, just because of the size of the relay, I guess. So then you look down in your cavity, and when I look in the cavity, I see that there's only 4 out of the 5 contacts are actually in there. So it's only using 4 out of the 5. So which one isn't it using? Well, I'll line it up, I'll look, it's the middle one on this side, and then you look at the numbers, and 5, 2, 1, 4. It's 4 that's not being used, which is 87A. So 87A is the normally closed, that's not present. So that's not normally used. So you got 87 and 30. Those are your main powers, and those are the big lugs. Those are these two here. And then you got your switch, which are the small ones, 85 and 86, and those are here. So knowing that, you can come in on your big power terminals, right, and go to ground and figure out which one is the main supply power for this relay, which my test light's lighting up. All right, and I look and I see and I know it's this one here, which is terminal 3. So terminal 3, going back and looking on my roadmap here, terminal 3 is number 30. So 30 is my power coming into the relay. So now I need to know if I got power going out of the relay, okay, which would be on terminal 5, which is switched, and that's number 87 is my power going out of the relay to the AC system, and then my switch is going to be on these two here. right? So what you can do is you can first see if you have power, and the key is off, so I have nothing on either side of these relays here. So what I did was I turned the key on, put the AC on, and I got power on one side, and I had a ground current on the other side, and I checked that ground current to body ground to make sure it was good ground, and it worked. And then when I had the AC on, just key on, AC on, and I started to plug this in, I could feel it clicking as I plugged it in. So I knew the switch was working, but was I getting output power? All right, was I getting output power on 87, which is this lug right here? So what I did was I plugged it in. Okay, I was fairly confident, not 100%, that this relay worked. I could feel it clicking, fairly confident. All right, I started the car up for a second, and I unplugged the factory harness behind the compressor, which is right here. I'll move the camera again. So right behind the compressor is a factory harness. I unplugged it, and I checked to see if I had 12 volts going to the compressor, and I did. So I know I had 12 volts going to the compressor. I know I had a ground in the compressor. I got power. The compressor's still not coming on. I shut the car off again. And that's when I broke out the multimeter, right? So the multimeter, all right, well, I shouldn't say that. That's when I jumped this. So I took a paper clip, I jumped these two terminals, compressor still didn't turn on. So this bypasses low pressure. So I know my low pressure is not my problem. The compressor is not turning on. I got power at the compressor when I'm supposed to, so I know the relay is working. I got ground at the compressor. What can I check here? Well, I could check this low pressure circuit pretty easily by doing a polarity test with my multimeter. All right, and just taking my multimeter, putting it on continuity test with my multimeter, just using the sound. I don't even care what the reading is at this point. So, right, I know that if I have enough pressure in here and I go down to the low pressure switch, which has two blade terminals in here, and I just touch both blade terminals, I know this switch is closed because there's enough pressure in the system. So my problem isn't there. I don't need to have the paperclip jumper in here. I have enough pressure in the system. So I can rule that out, hopefully. Well, hopefully these wires are intact. You know, we don't know the integrity of the wires, but let's assume that they're good. Now I need to know, do I have a decent ground? Right, so I'm gonna look for resistance to my ground. So now I'm gonna go and I'm gonna check my ground. So I'll put this on the ground, and I got continuity, and now let me see if I can get resistance here. This should show me the resistance. So I'm in ohms now. And I'm showing none because this meter, I can't knock down the ohms even low enough. There's going to be some I slipped off. So staying on that ground and then going on my battery ground. All right, it's 0.0. It's less than a tenth of an ohm. So I know that ground is decent. So now I'm kind of confused. So I said, well, what about when the system is loaded? Maybe I'm having a problem. Maybe the ground's not good enough when it's loaded. Maybe this switch is failing when it's running and it's loaded. So I started it up. And here's what I found. Now I started up, put the AC on, and go through all the same checks I did with the vehicle running, the system loaded, AC on, and I was even able to pull the relay up just a touch snake a paper clip in, touching that output of the relay, and then hitting it with my meter to make sure I got battery voltage going into the system, and I did. Check the harness, both unplugged and plugged, going to the back of, you know, for the AC compressor. And the reason why I did it, I unplugged it and checked to make sure I had battery voltage on the vehicle side of the harness, and I did. And then I plugged it in to make sure that battery voltage was making it through that connection, and I did. So I was like, holy cow, I mean, everything is working. Then all of a sudden I realized the compressor, while I'm doing these checks, I didn't even notice it, the compressor was clicking on and off. It was cycling on and off every 10 seconds or so. And then as the vehicle warmed up, I'm going through all these checks, and I'm checking all the circuits, and I'm doing everything I can to check as many things as possible. And I realized the compressor stopped going on and off. So it was clicking on and off for a good 5 or 10 minutes. And then when the vehicle got hot, the compressor stopped. So now my compressor clutch stopped when the vehicle got hot, and now I'm kind of looking at the compressor as my problem, because I got power, all my circuits are good, my relay worked, everything seems to be working, but the vehicle warmed up, compressor stopped, and I could not get that compressor to come back on. I checked my low pressure switch again, everything like that, couldn't get it to work. So compressor clutch is going to be where I'm going to focus, and that's what we're going to pick up on the next video, working on this 2000 XJ, trying to get the AC working and figure out what's going on. I hope this helped. I wish I had it actually, you know, but those are the checks I did. The test light, you know, a meter, just checking voltage and continuity and resistance to ground, and I was able to confirm that, at least from my layman's do-it-yourselfer terms, that the wiring system and the integrity of the system seem to be intact. And now I might have a mechanical problem, and it seems to occur only when it gets hot at the compressor clutch. And we'll continue on in the next video with that one. Hope you enjoyed it. Comments, suggestions.